This week on the Cinema Psycho Show, we're traveling back in time to 1996 to talk about the movie Biodome, a movie that just might be responsible for the death of Pauly Shore's film career and the death of the Save the Planet movement of the mid to late 90s. Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show, the madhouse for film freaks and film fans of all types. I'm your host, Brian Coddington, joined by my fellow co-host and filmmaker, John Woolscroft.
Can't imagine why the Weasel's career died.
Oh, no, John, I cannot imagine why the Weasel's career died. This was, and I'm going to get this right off my chest. This was by far one of the most painful watches of a movie in a long time. Like, I'm not calling it Neil Breen level bad, because that's a whole other level. But if we're talking about competent acting and like someone who spent money on a thing, this is pretty bad. But we're, of course, this episode talking about Biodome. Not the dome within the dome, but just Biodome.
Oh, Pauly Shore.
Shore. Fucking hell, man.
Let's talk about his like meteoric rise and meteoric fall. He was like very popular on MTV, which, let's face it, he's a Nepo baby. You know, his mother owns the most famous comedy club in the world.
Comedy Store.
Yeah, in Los Angeles. So that got him on MTV, and he was very much the product of like the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. Like, you had to be there kind of humor. Like, if you showed it to somebody now who was like the age demographic that he was made up for today, they'd be like, what is this? But then
90s were fucking weird, John.
Yeah,
they were rewatching this movie, like, you might watch this and be like, well, the 90s really can't be that. And I'm like, you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They were very much that. And honestly, like, I look at it as from the period of around 1990, what would you say, 3 to about 1997. This is what the 90s looked and sounded like very much, like to a T.
But then he gets sweat like Encino Man, and then we have Son-in-Law, Jury Duty, in the Army now.
Well, he had such a rise, because like he was never front and center. And I'm going to get to a point later in this episode where I talk about why I think Pauly Shore kind of failed. But, you know, long and short of it is, I really think that the man does really well when he is not front and center, when he is not the protagonist, when he is not the main focus of the story. If we look at movies like Encino Man especially, and Son-in-Law, he's not really the primary person. Like, Son-in-Law a little bit more so, because they really were trying to milk it, but it's more or less like the other characters, like the daughter and what's his face, who's the father, like, and that whole dynamic of, why do you have this stick in the mud father who's a farmer, and you've got Pauly Shore, the loopy doopy, you know, VJ from MTV. Like, that sort of works, but once he started being the main character, that's when it kind of all shit the bed.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's strange, because like he makes this movie, and I think it's like the first true flop of his run, and it's just like it's over.
Yeah. This movie, especially Biodome, is like the last gasp.
Yeah,
the last gasp. Like, this killed Pauly Shore's career for the most part. He tried coming back a little bit later. He had a TV series called Pauly. He had Pauly Shore's Dead a couple years later. He made a couple cameo appearances here and there, but never to the extent that he was in the, you know, early 90s up till this movie. Like, 95, 96 especially, 95, 96, you couldn't get nothing but Pauly Shore left and right, between Jury Duty, In the Army Now, and fucking Biodome.
And Brian, I gotta ask you, who thought this up? And I mean, look, I will always
That's the question, isn't it, John?
Yeah. I will always congratulate anybody that has an original idea who doesn't just make a movie that's a sequel, remake based off a book, what have you. But who thought, let's make a movie about a bio preserve and two idiots inside of it?
I mean, I don't know. I almost have a feel, and I have a feeling I might be wrong on this one, so I don't want anyone calling me out. But I have a feeling that this might have been a Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure sequel in sheep's clothing. I really
Yeah.
believe that. But like, it has some basis in reality because in the 90s, there was this renewed push for environmentalism. You know, Earth Day, I believe, was founded in the early 90s, right? Like, I think it was 90, I think it was
No,
90, 91.
oh, I think it would became very popular then, but I think Earth Day is actually much older than that.
Okay, well,
I'm not sure.
I know it became really, really popular
Yeah.
in the early 90s. Like, I remember every time we went to school, like, they'd be going nuts on Earth Day and shit. And there was a lot of renewed focus on saving the rainforest and like people, it was in vogue to be concerned about the environment.
We
There
all saw
was no
Fern Gully.
yeah, yeah. But now you might ask yourself the question of what happened? I don't know. It was in vogue, but it was one of those things that were it was a performative in vogue. It was, you could pretend, you could say, oh yeah, I support the environment, but then never do anything.
Well,
Doing things is hard.
you put your cherry Coke can in the recycling bin and got a boner. Like, oh, I
Yes.
saved the world.
I saved the world because I purchased something that supports the World Wildlife Federation, but that's all I'm doing.
Yeah.
Right. But my point is like this style very much kind of fits. There was actually a Biosphere 2. This was a real thing. It was inspired by the real life project, the Biosphere 2. And it's more or less like, what happens if we get a bunch of snooty scientists who are trying to save the planet with a bunch of stoner idiots?
Which
Hilarity ensues.
I think that this movie has one thing, and you're gonna be like, where the fuck's he going with this? It has one thing in common with Batman Forever, and that is what happens when you have a meteoric rising star and a co-star who feels they have to try to do everything they can to one up them. So I feel that Stephen Baldwin is to Pauly Shore in this movie what Tommy Lee Jones was to Jim Carrey, where it's like he is just desperately trying to match or one up Pauly Shore, and it's like, dude, stop. Please stop.
Well, according to Wikipedia, Stephen Baldwin, who you might think might hate this movie, because I would think like kind of like with Batman Forever, John, like obviously Tommy Lee Jones did not want to be there, like at all. It kind of reads on the screen, and when you look at behind the scenes stuff, but like apparently, and according to Wikipedia, this is what this says. In 2013, Stephen Baldwin was in talks to try to make a sequel. So he must not have hated Pauly Shore too much. It must not have hated the experience too much because he thought, hey, let's go bring Biodome back because we need that.
Hey, when he's not, grifting people through religion, he's got to be like, okay, what's my book of business? What's my back catalog that I can try to push sequels for?
You know what drives me nuts, though, about Stephen Baldwin in this movie is that this is Stephen Baldwin right after The Usual Suspects.
That's true.
He was really good in The Usual Suspects. And then he's like, you know what? I'm going to go make this goofy fucking Biodome movie with goofy fucking Pauly Shore. That's gonna, do really well for my career. And you can't tell me like you didn't see the shit in the script if there was one.
Yeah, sometimes these movies, like, they're just still rewriting to the day of shooting. Like, he may have just heard, hey, Pauly Shore's one of the biggest stars out there right now. You want to make a movie with him? Sure. Is there a script? Nah, there will be. Don't worry about it.
All right, John. So how do we actually want to tackle this thing? Because I got to be honest with you, like, I really watch this thing. This was like god awful to sit through.
Oh, how we've changed since the early to mid 90s, Brian. But
it's true. It's true.
But this movie has that trope of two unlikable douchebags who have like somehow extremely beautiful and extremely loyal girlfriends that they do nothing to deserve. You know, it's I that weird 90s thing of that like slacker ideal that was pushed by like MTV and others, that like you can just be a complete selfish reprobate, but women will want you, which
Yeah,
isn't
no,
true.
it's the opening of this movie has basically Pauly Shore and Stephen Baldwin trying to get out of, going to a protest or something like that with their insanely hot girlfriends.
Mhm.
Like insanely hot. Like, and again, John, like just like you said, like there is no way in fucking hell that anyone who does the shit that Pauly Shore and Stephen Baldwin do in this movie could ever get, you know, mid 90s Joey Lauren Adams. Like, never,
Yeah.
never, not even possible. I don't care who the fuck you are. I don't care. I don't care if your dick is like, 10 feet long. No, no.
The weasel was a tripod.
The weasel was a tripod. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I just like, they're such assholes the whole time. And like right after like they storm out, they immediately cut to in their car talking about how, oh yeah, they're terrible, but they're getting better. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Fuck.
We can fix them.
We can yeah. You can't fix stupid. And they're fucking stupid. like that's it. So yeah, and then they somehow get the idea that if they, crash some other environmental thing that their girlfriends are going to, because their girlfriends lied to them to kind of screw with their heads, that they'll get them back. Because you get the feeling that that's literally all they do. They fuck up, do one sweet gesture, and that wins over their girlfriends each and every time.
90s.
90s. Because we're hoping that your attention span is only 5 seconds long. I say 5 seconds because it isn't until we get to the 2020s that the attention span goes down to 2 seconds.
Yeah. And basically this movie, to its only credit, doesn't waste much time. It's like, oh, we need to make it up to our girlfriends. Well, I have to piss, go into that mall, which is the Biodome, and then they get locked in. So the movie takes very little time on the first act. It just gets going.
I mean, there isn't a lot to this movie, John, other than like what are you expecting? I mean, the movie's called Biodome. If we're not in the Biodome, it defeats the purpose of the movie. But yeah, I mean, they think that this place is a mall because of course they do. A mall in the middle of the fucking desert because they're in Arizona. Okay.
There has to be a reason that they like think it's okay to go in there. Which, I mean, having to really go to the bathroom could be just enough reason anyways. Like, hey, go to that large building over there. But I guess we have to continue the fact that they're these slacker morons that think everything's a mall.
I mean, you're in the
or
fucking desert.
skate
Take a
park.
well, I'm like you're in the fucking desert. Go take a shit.
Yeah.
Or a piss there. I don't think anyone cares. In fact, I'm pretty sure you probably would have like stepped in shit and piss when you were at the lake that was, filled with garbage and crap earlier in the movie.
And the Biodome is run by William Atherton, which I feel really bad for this actor because
man, he is perpetually cast as the dickhead villain in every movie.
Yeah, it reminds me, I can't remember the name of the actor as well that plays Shooter McGavin in like Happy Gilmore.
He's just Shooter McGavin at this point.
Yeah. But he has one of those faces too that like I'm sure these are lovely men, but they always get cast as the biggest douchebags ever. But in this one, he's supposed to be the villain, but he's not wrong.
Yeah, he's not wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, blowing up the Biodome, I think is probably like, I wouldn't know if I necessarily do that, but like, he's not wrong to be pissed off at Bud and Doyle because they're fucking horrible. But let's look at William Atherton's like filmography of villainy. Okay, so first of all, he was the villain In Ghostbusters, he was This Man Has No Dick. Okay. Then he was the villain in Real Genius. Great flick if you have never seen that. Then he was what? The villain in Biodome.
Don't forget Die Hard.
Oh, I was going to say, that was Die Hard 2. He was the villain in Die Hard. Die Hard 2. So yeah, just that man, no matter what, and even in Ghostbusters Afterlife, he was, well, not Afterlife, it was the Frozen Empire. He was a villain again, which I guess you could say it's the same character. But either way, poor William Atherton, he probably like went to school for acting, did all the things right, but just had a face for villainy. That always loses every time.
And again, yeah, he's not wrong. The premise, if we haven't made it clear, is that this biodome has to be hermetically sealed for 1 year to keep everything as preserved as possible. So the idea is that it's right after it gets locked that they realize that Pauly Shore and Stephen Baldwin are in there, and so now they're stuck in there for a year as well, which they don't have enough. They even point out they don't have enough like food rations for a whole year for 2 more people.
Well, not even that. Like, there's no clothes. There's no clothes. Yeah. Like, they're wearing the same year-old clothes.
Yeah.
For most of the movie, like.
But then,
if it's supposed, like, here's the thing I don't get, and that, like, you brought up a very good point there about the rations thing. If everything is about, okay, yes, we need everything to be hermetically sealed, and we need everything to be kind of set at one standard because of all of our scientific measurements, isn't the experiment already moot because of the fact you have 2 idiots who are taking more than what had been previously arranged? Isn't that like you've already thrown it off?
Yeah. Yeah, it's already ruined.
It's already ruined. Like, I don't get what, and like on top of that, like as we find out later in the movie, there's a back door that just has a key. Like, you could just walk right the fuck out.
Yeah.
Not hermetically sealed or anything. It's just walked right the fuck out.
And that's the biggest problem, is that there is nothing redeeming about these 2 characters at all. And it seems like they just do the worst things imaginable, and everybody except William Atherton just kind of just forgives them. And then almost
William Atherton tries to spin it and tries to be forgiving at first. Like that's the thing, and that's like he is justified in his anger because he's the first one to lend a hand. He is the first one with his little, like, you know, scarf shit that he's got on. He's the first one to be like, let's welcome these guys in. Let's be nice to them. And what do Bud and Doyle give him in return? Hell. Literal hell.
Yeah.
So yeah, I understand why he's pissed off.
And that's basically the whole second act of this movie, is Pauly Shore gonna Pauly. It's just watch them act like doofuses and morons who sabotage everything unintentionally or intentionally for the entire second act of this movie, including that sweet 90s sexual harassment that wow, the 90s is a different time,
man. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, John. One, I fully believe that I don't think there was a second act written. I think the second act in the script, and listeners of this podcast and viewers of this podcast, please do me a favor, go out and find the script to Biodome. I'm sure it's on there, but I want to know, is there just one line that just says, as John kind of pointed out, Pauly's gonna Pauly? And that's it. Like, that's the second act, because all it is just a series of vignettes. There is nothing else that happens. It's Pauly Shore and Stephen Baldwin being fucking morons in a montage sequence that goes way too fucking long. Okay?
It's like an hour.
Way too fucking long. It's like, yeah, it is like an hour. But that's the whole second half, because nothing really of substance happens other than just like, you realize that, yes, these 2 are morons and the things that they do are moronic. Shouldn't you laugh at them bungee jumping from the top of the biodome, or destroying their fruit crop by turning it into an alcoholic drink, or as you said, John, sexually harassing the two hot scientists in the biodome, because of course there's two hot scientists. Kylie Minogue has to be a scientist.
And they totally, they totally pull Casey Affleck, they just jump in the bed of sleeping women and like start groping them and
yes,
spooning them.
And this is they still have super hot girlfriends too. Like, just don't forget that part. Like, as soon as they're locked into the biodome, they immediately jump to like, well, I can't see my girlfriend for a year, so as much as I just said a scene ago that I love them, I'm now going to go ahead and sexually harass these two scientists
on a daily basis too.
Yes, it is a daily basis of sexual harassment, and the movie is guilty of this too, because of course we have to have Kylie Minogue in the shortest of short shorts.
Science
the whole
shorts.
fucking, I'm like, science shorts, yes. She's a botanist, of course. What the fuck? Who has to eat a carrot in the most suggestive way possible? To just be like, yes, I don't like you, but I secretly do like you. I want the weasel.
Yeah. Because apparently in this universe, it is perfectly fine to flirt and sexually harass women constantly, but then just at the last minute you have to go, oh no, I have a girlfriend, when somehow they find you attractive.
Insanity is a thing. I attribute that scene, and what John is referencing is later on in the movie. And yes, this episode is going to jump the fuck around because it's fucking biodome. We don't have a whole ton. We're only 23 minutes into this bitch, and Jesus Christ. So yeah, we're going to jump around. But yes, the sexual harassment for 364 days pays off. Like, it's a guess a thing where it's like, well, you know what? Yeah, I guess he's cute in the most moronic of ways, because at the very end, both the sexy scientists decide that they're going to take Bud and Doyle up on their offer, their last night there. And and it's all because, John, and you forgot this part, they spent the months cleaning up their own mess. That's it.
That is the biggest problem, is there's nothing redeeming about these two. Like, they get out of the biodome, they find like a key to a window in the back, which you think if they're
safety.
So they get out and they decide to do the worst thing imaginable, which is to throw a huge party inside the biodome, absolutely destroying everything. And then they want to try to redeem these characters at the end, when the scientists were like, oh, everything's ruined, this is like our dream and it's over, and we feel bad. And then, like, Pauly and Steven have to be like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have been the worst human beings who ever lived. Let's see if we can fix this.
But John, they had to throw the party to get back at their girlfriends who went to another party. That was it. It was called, I gotta throw my own rager in the biodome to get back at my girlfriends, even though I've spent the past 3 months trying to have sex with 2 other really attractive scientists in the biodome.
This movie's a mess.
It is a fucking mess. And here's the thing. As a kid, I thought this movie was great.
Yeah.
And I mentioned to John before we started recording, I was like, man, there is really something to knowing that your brain is not fully formed when you are around 11 or 12 years old. Because at 11 or 12 years old, I thought this movie was great. 39 years old? Fucking terrible.
It is kind of unwatchable.
You're going to be looking at your phone the whole time. but yeah, John, just get back to the point here. They throw the giant rager, and yes, their big character arc is that they cleaned up their own mess. Which I'm like, that's like celebrating you taking a shit and wiping your ass. It's like, congratulations, you did the bare minimum.
No, Brian, it's like if I came into your house and I shit all over the floor and I went and you're like, why is there shit all over the floor in my kitchen? I'll be like, I did that, but don't worry, I'll clean it up. I'll get some wipes.
It'll take you 6 months to do it.
Yeah, I'll take 6 months to clean up this Mookie stinks.
It's like I went ahead and I wiped my shit all over your things. You're never gonna get that smell out, but it's gonna take me 6 months to do it.
Wait, is Biodome just Cat in the Hat?
Oh my god. It is Cat in the Hat. but just done over the course of say 6 months. But yeah, it takes him 6 months to get the place up to quote unquote homeostasis, which I'm like, there's no way in hell.
Meanwhile,
no way in hell.
It sets the premise up that it's going to take 1 year of uninterrupted, unbroken, hermetically sealed, to get to homeostasis. But then the movie just absolutely steps on that and goes, oh, well, no, if these two just, pick themselves up by their bootstraps and work hard and roll up their sleeves, they could do it in 6 months.
But John, let's look at the overall message. It's pointing to us and telling us that, hey, even though our Earth is fucking destroyed, if we just clean up our mess, we can make it work.
Which that's an interesting lie that we were told in the 90s, that it's like, it's up to us to not run too much water, to recycle, to use compost if you can, if you got a home garden. And no, it's the corporations that are destroying the world. Like, we are a fraction of the solution compared to what needs to be happening at the top down. But they put it on us that, well, make sure that if you see some litter, pick it up and throw it in the garbage cans and you'll save the world. It's like, that's not remotely how it works. But this movie absolutely continues that message that it's up to us to fix the world. It's like, no, it's up to the billion-dollar corporations that are destroying the world ever so quickly.
I think I have a word to describe this movie, and at least that idea, and it's performative environmentalism.
Yeah,
that's what I think it is. Performative environmentalism. But yeah, because like I go back to like, okay, you're gonna tell me that that Faulkner and Leakey, who are massive billionaires, that they probably don't own some corporations that do some terrible shit to the environment.
Got some fossil fuel companies in their
You're gonna tell me that on top of having the biodome, that they probably don't have an offshore oil rig somewhere.
Yeah,
because of course they do, because they also are performative. Okay, so I look at it as like, the arc for these characters is, good job, you cleaned up your fucking mess. So let's reward you by giving the chance to two-time your girlfriends.
Yeah.
And being decent enough to say no after you've made out with them for 5 minutes.
Well, I think that was probably just a director being like, hey, Pauly, Steven, you want to like grab Kylie Minogue's butt?
Maybe.
In the original script, it was like 5 seconds, but yeah, we're gonna like go for a couple minutes so you can grope these actresses.
Yeah.
The 90s.
The 90s, kids. Surge, Extreme,
Tamagotchi.
Tamagotchi. Oh shit.
Tony Hawk, Pizza Bagel Bites.
Pizza Bagel.
Power Rangers, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
I mean, Stone Cold was more of a 97 thing.
Yeah, that was the end of the 90s.
That was the end of it. That was the end of it. You're jumping to a little bit past that. Yeah, but that's what they do, is they come up with these goofy ways to fix the biodome after throwing their giant rager. And it does work somehow. Good on them. And their girlfriends haven't left them. Okay, even though they try. And there's a weird subplot here that I thought, like, you could have cut this whole section. Although, honestly, you had to have something to cut against the Pauly Shore, like, montages. But there's this weird subplot where both of Bud and Doyle's girlfriends are like, well, Bud and Doyle are in the biodome with these hot, 20-year-old women. So let's go ahead and find our own pieces of ass to cheat on them with, who are at the environmental parties, right? So that happens, and it doesn't work out for them. You get some really cool cameos though during that. You've got Tenacious D, like Jack Black, right? Well before his stardom shoot, when he was just known as the guy from Tenacious D. And of course, Kyle Gass.
Call that a cameo? Because they were basically unknown at the time. Wasn't it just a gig that turns out to go, hey, that was Tenacious D?
They were known at the time. Like, this is 96. So and I know that because they cut into them as we're going to focus on them. So they were totally known at the time, but they were only known for the music part. They weren't known for Jack Black's acting abilities hadn't been really stretched. I mean, he had done a stint in Cable Guy. That was it. But I think this movie came out before Cable Guy.
Well, he was in love with Pitfall Harry. That was the first thing he did. He did an Atari commercial when he was
that's true
10 years old. He was in Never Ending Story 3. He was in Bob Roberts. Yeah.
And The Jackal. He was also in The Jackal.
The Jackal with Bruce
so
Willis.
Good.
Yeah.
But you get a cameo from him. You get Rose McGowan in a cameo as well. Well, again, showing off a style of the 90s that was a real thing. Like the whole doll dress thing. That was a thing that people did. Don't quite get it, but it was the style, man. Yeah, so there's some weird cameos in there during this whole subplot. The stepdad is kind of creepy too. Not stepdad, he's the boyfriend of Joey Lauren Adams, which you might have seen him in other things because he's one of those character actors. He was in what the fuck was the movie? I'm blanking on it. Oh, Nothing But Trouble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was. I actually looked him up when I was watching this because he had one of those where do I recognize this guy from faces?
Taylor Negron is his name.
And poor guy died too soon.
He did.
Not to get depressing here, but taken too soon from us. So
he was only 57 when he passed away.
But Brian, I think that this whole thing exists because we need to get out of the biodome for a little bit,
That's true. We need to get out of the biodome and not create a dome within a dome.
Yeah.
That's a line from the movie. Where do you fucking go from here, John? I mean, the science. Do you want to talk a little bit about the scientists that are given some time? I mean, we talked a little bit about Faulkner. He's kind of the visionary person. You've Kylie Minogue, who's Petra von Kant. Okay, she's there to be kind of eye candy. So is who else is here? There are a bunch of other people.
Well, there's one scientist they consistently ruin his life.
Oh my God, yes. What the hell is his name? Romulus.
Yeah. He's just it's like a Three Stooges setup every time. It's like, oh, see this room? This is where I have all of my insects. I would hate it if two doofuses accidentally broken open all the preserved cages and started killing my insects. And then the two morons just walk in on cue and do it, and then they just don't care that they just ruined his life, and they walk off. Vignette's over, and by the end of the movie, they've won this guy over. It's like, what?
He's sharing his toothbrush with them. Yeah. Kevin West plays TC Romulus, which of course the name Romulus, you got to be the nerdy one in the group. Which I'm they're all nerds, they're scientists. That's kind of it goes with the thing. But the end of this movie, and I'm jumping ahead towards the end of the movie because there's not a whole lot. It's not. Yeah. There's not. But we're given this whole thing where after the party, Faulkner disappears, and everyone thinks that they don't know where the hell he is. Which I'm you're in a hermetically sealed dome, and you're telling me you haven't found this guy?
Yeah, just clear some rooms.
6 months? You've got, that's how big is this fucking thing? Does it go down 10 stories? We don't know. So it's a surprise when Faulkner shows up right towards the end of the movie. And after having, you know, looked down at Bud and Doyle try to, you know, make the dome better, like, and clean up their fucking mess, he still comes to the conclusion that he has to blow them up all. Like, just so he eats a parrot, which this scene was really strange because they introduced the parrot and then a second later he eats him, and it's like a month, 2 months have passed. Like, I'm like, did you guys cut something? Because you must have, because I'm feeling that there was something there.
They did one draft of a script for a Pauly Shore project, and they went, "All right, let's just film it."
Yeah.
I guess they needed an ending, like an antagonist for the ending. It wasn't just a matter of them like fixing their mistakes and whether they'll beat the ticking clock. That MacGuffin, but it's just oh no, we need an action sequence at the end. So we need, uh this man to try to blow up the biodome, and will our two complete imbeciles get out alive, and so will our hot scientists get out alive too?
They do. They do. But yeah, he tries to blow them up with C4 coconuts.
Which,
yeah,
you need
tracks.
Why did the biodome have plastique?
Well, why did the biodome have plastic explosive? Why did it have, like, it's never explained. But they have literally a bin filled with all of the candy and garbage and garbage food and shit that they said they don't want to eat, but it's there.
Yeah, that's
like, there's so many plot holes with this movie.
And again, I think that they really think that their audience is not just 13-year-olds, but stupid 13-year-olds, where it's like, at this point, they're going to want to watch Pauly eat candy because they like candy too, even though there would be no reason for there to be candy in this biodome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or plastic explosive.
Yeah.
Or the chemicals to make plastic explosives. Like, what? Why is that there? Like, it could be like, well, will they have fertilizer? It's like, okay, fine, but I'm pretty sure you need more than just fertilizer to make a bomb of that extreme.
Perhaps I shouldn't admit this, but that you'd have an easier time making napalm than you would an explosive. But
that's good to know that, Sean. Thank you. It's like, you have a copy of the Anarchist Cookbook, is what you're saying.
I don't know what you're talking about, Brian.
You know what you're talking about. Okay, fair enough. No one look at John's library reading list, is what we're saying. Yeah. So this whole thing happens where Faulkner is like, I need you to help me distribute my coconuts, and I look like a fucking crazy person who hasn't shaved in 6 months. So let's not question it. And our two idiots being two idiots don't do anything until they try to, go long on a coconut and it explodes. So now the coconuts they put around are explosives. And we have to stop them.
And help me remember, because it's been about now a week since I watched this, and I think my brain tried to forget. I mean, he does succeed. Like, they do blow up the biodome, right?
They blow up the front part.
The front part, yeah. Okay.
The front part. So, so long story short, which you could call the short story short. But yeah, they're able to get the detonator from Faulkner, and also I think Doyle knocks him out with the stone. So, they defuse almost all the bombs that they had distributed with Faulkner, because again, they're idiots. And Faulkner, though, wakes up right towards the end when they're like, yay, celebration, we made it. It made homeostasis. The movie's over. And he throws one of those coconuts, and it actually does cause an explosion that rips out through the front of the biodome. So that does happen, and they're unscathed.
Yeah. They just walk out to thunderous.
Just walk out. They're good.
Yeah.
They're good. No worries. Yeah. And then, of course, they reunite with their, super hot girlfriends in front of their super hot scientists. And Everything's good. And where do they end up next, John? Do you remember?
Oh God, where do they end up at the end of this?
Nuclear power plant.
Oh yes, yeah, yeah. For
And the best part is, and this is worth going to a solo shot for a video audience. The best part is this movie had the balls to think they were getting a sequel because they had an end shot of Faulkner surviving and running off into the desert. Wow.
I mean,
Wow.
all these other Pauly Shore movies are not as unwatchable as this one, but they're all terrible.
They all are terrible.
Except maybe Encino Man, but that's not, as you pointed out,
Encino
Brian,
Man,
that's not a Pauly Shore project.
I don't consider Encino Man, and to some degree, I don't consider Son-in-Law to be true Pauly Shore films. I think what we're talking about here is Pauly Shore when he is the prime person. When he is the prime person. And like really, there are three of them, three core ones. In the Army Now, Jury Duty, and Biodome. Those three really are the ones where like you wanted the weasel, so we're going to give you the weasel for 90 minutes.
They basically wanted to make him like 90s surfer doofus Ernest. You know, it's like, could we come up with a new Ernest, you know, but like have a completely different, but just have Pauly Shore play the same character in every movie.
Yeah, but Ernest, there's always room for Ernest. Let's be honest here. Ernest P. Worrell, you could have him in a movie about, I don't know, the Iraq War, and we'd still watch it.
Ernest goes to Baghdad.
R.I.P. Ernest. But we need you now more than ever.
But you know, I guess they figured, well, all these other Pauly Shore movies did well. This one's gonna do well, and we'll make a sequel out of it, you know. And then it bombed. And man, talk about no second chances. Like this movie did terrible, and his career was just absolutely shot. Because I don't count a voice work in a Goofy movie as, you know. Although, did that come out before this? I can't remember.
I think it did.
Yeah,
I think it did come out before this.
Okay, so yeah, after this, like this bombed, and it was just his career died instantly. And man, I could imagine just like if I fuck up once, it's all over. But that's kind of what it was for him. And
why do you think that it did fail as hard as it did?
This movie or his career?
His career. Like that's what I'm saying is why do you think that, like, what's your, you know, you've done comedy. You've done, stand up and improv stuff. Why do you think that after Biodome that he kind of just dropped off?
It wasn't packaged to last, and he didn't have any range. So I think him being pushed, everybody involved knew this is a fad, this is a time being kind of thing. And it's not like Pauly has the ability to adapt and evolve with the time. That's basically his entire shtick. And once they feel, well, okay, the novelty's worn off, it's over now. It's not like Pauly could be like, oh, well, now I can go and do my Shakespearean comedy. It's not there, you know? So he had no other outlet. And I will say, he is a very bitter man if you've seen him in any like podcast interviews and stuff. But he is very bitter.
I watched one interview he did where he did talk about Biodome and he did talk about his career. And I don't think he's necessarily bitter. I think he, was giving people what he thought they wanted and what probably executives at these studios told him that they wanted him to do. They probably said like, hey, we want more of the weasel. Give us all the weasel you can get. And then think about it, John. Like if you're being told, hey, go do the weasel shit over and over again, for what? If you think about it, he kind of originated it in the late 80s.
So like 7 years.
So for
7,
over
8 years.
7, 8 years, you were told do this character over and over again, and then suddenly that doesn't work. Yeah, that might make you bitter when all these people that did kind of support you just kind of drop off the radar, and no one's giving you work. And I understand where he might be pissed off. I really do. But I also look at it and go like, well, other comedians have tried this too. Jim Carrey is one I think about. Adam Sandler is one I think about, where they originated as this one archetype of a goofy character and then transition to something else.
Yeah.
Like, do you remember when Jim Carrey tried to go dark? You remember when he did that? When he did Number 23?
Well, I thought you even just meant like the Cable Guy, which was still comedy but dark.
I'm talking about when he did I'm not going to do comedy. I'm going to be very serious and very dark. He did Number 23, which if you've never seen that movie, that's a movie that is not a comedy at all. And it's not rubber-faced comedian Jim Carrey. It is actor Jim Carrey. And I think you need to have those breaks to try things out. Did it work? No. But it did give the population a kind of taste of, hey, I can do other things, even if it doesn't work.
Yeah, it's, and you mentioned Adam Sandler, like he went from like man baby doofus to like as he got older, it was more now I'm like a father with an unspeakably hot wife that makes no sense that I'm with. Now I'm kind of an adult man doofus. So it's like he couldn't play that character forever because he's aging. So it's just he kind of kept somewhat of the same shtick, but just made it age appropriate for himself.
Yeah, he really got into, especially in like the mid 2000s and 2010s. He really tried doing the dad humor thing a lot, and now I think he's just doing like I'm gonna try doing the dramatic comedy thing.
Yeah,
like he did like Uncut Gems and those sort of movies that are not really comedic in sense. But I think that's kind of a transition, right? That you can see with comics doing. I mean, Jesus Christ, people like to forget this, but Tom Hanks was a comedic actor first.
Yeah. And he did a bunch of goofy movies like Joe vs. the Volcano, Bachelor Party.
And then he decided to try something different. He decided to try acting serious. And, now we live with Tom Hanks being one of the most beloved actors that we have in cinema.
I remember when Jim Carrey like did the Truman Show, like I was so scared because I love Jim Carrey so much. And it seemed like he was leaning a little bit more towards like serious films. And I remember my dad saying he can't talk out of his ass forever.
It's true though. It's true. And I think that's where Pauly Shore kind of failed at. And I think that's probably why he's bitter, is because he was told, hey, yeah, be the weasel forever. But he just, as you said, John, like he doesn't have the range, or at least not the drive to try something different and not be the weasel and be a serious character and try that route and see what happens. And it might fail. Like that's the thing, is that he might, I think a while back he was going to do, I think he was trying to raise money for a movie about Richard Simmons, in which he was going to play Richard Simmons. I don't know if that movie ever came to light or if it got the funding it needed, but like that's the sort of project that I would want to see Pauly Shore in and see if he could transition to doing something that's more dramatic.
And I think a lot of people, just kind of scoffed at it like, oh, it's just gonna be the weasel as Richard Simmons. And it's like, he's never been able to escape that. Like now, if he was like, if we had done Uncut Gems without Adam Sandler, if we'd done that with Pauly Shore, that movie would have been laughed out of the theater. Like the trailer would have been laughed at because we just won't allow Pauly Shore to grow in any way, shape, or form. And I think that documentary that you talked about, like Pauly Shore is Dead, like was an attempt to try to say, hey, I can try to do other things, but he just is never given an opportunity to grow.
Yeah. What he needs is he needs a Paul Rubens blow moment. If you
Yeah.
know what I'm talking about, Paul Rubens for pretty much, most of his career was Pee Wee Herman. And it wasn't really until he played Derek for real in Blow that people looked at him as something other than Pee Wee Herman. And he had a very short kind of revival in his career from doing the movie Blow. And I think it's one of those things that Pauly Shore will get that moment when he is not the main character. And I think that's what he needs to do. He needs to go back to being a secondary character. He needs to go back to being a supporting actor in a more serious film and give the audience a chance to reintroduce themselves to Pauly Shore, not as the Weasel, but as a comedic actor. And I think not a comedic actor, but a dramatic actor. And I think if he does that, then those opportunities will come. But he needs that Paul Rubens blow moment.
I think now's the time because this year we had The Last Showgirl with Pam Anderson, which allowed her to show that she can do more than just be the Baywatch babe. She was very much pigeonholed into, you're just a pair of tits. And she showed that like she can actually act in a movie, and it wasn't just laughed at, the idea of Pam Anderson being in this movie. So if we're opening the door for Pam, a 90s icon, maybe we can open one up for Pauly too, another 90s icon.
Dear studio executives who listen to the show, because I know you do. No, you don't. Give Pauly Shore a chance. Give him a chance to surprise you, because I have a feeling the Weasel is dead. Pauly Shore is alive and well. Okay. Now let's go ahead and jump to some reviews. Now, John, you have not seen these reviews yet, right?
No, I have not seen these, but boy, am I excited to see what we have in store.
Okay, this is gonna be fun. So let's jump to some of our reviews. I did pull these from Letterboxd, so give that with a grain of salt. So our first review is, wow. This is what sickness does to a man. Trapped in the throes of isolation, Biodome is almost a meta commentary of how I felt inside the last few days. I can't believe I convinced myself to watch this. Again, films like this and Chairman of the Board are a defilement to cinema, and not in the anti-comedy way that Tom Green was able to achieve with Freddy Got Fingered. They make that man look like Beethoven or Picasso in any kind of comparison. What I suppose is a feat in itself. Pauly Shore is the worst, and I've seen more of Stephen Baldwin's tongue than I'd ever thought possible. Let's put it this way. Biodome has a big stain on Stephen Baldwin's B-film career, yet he remains the best Baldwin bro. What does that say? Damn.
Wow.
Damn.
That was well written too. That was scorching and well written.
That was scorching. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what do you got for that, John? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, if we're just purely talking about acting and nothing about the people, I'm more of an Alec man myself. But yeah, they're not wrong. Boy, there's a lot to unpack. When you open that thing up, I'm like, oh, this is a short novel. But yeah, I think they're talking about the end result of that craze in the 90s of man baby can do no wrong. Selfish man baby can do no wrong in the end and get the hot chick they don't deserve. And they kind of hit the nail right on the head there. I do say at the beginning of this, though, it sounded almost like a cry for help. I hope this person gets to go out into the sun a little bit more. I don't know what the situation is.
Well, I think they must have been like sick with a cold or something like that.
Okay.
And they somehow decided to choose, out of all the films that you could possibly watch or TV shows you could possibly watch, to watch Biodome.
Probably remembered when they were 11 years old or 12
Yeah,
years old, you know?
and you know what? I think that is part of the problem is, when I went to rewatch this for the show, I was like, "Oh yeah, I've seen Biodome. I saw it when I was a kid, and I liked it when I was a kid." There's a very different version of yourself when you're 39 years old versus when you're 11 or 12.
Yeah.
And yeah, when you're 11 or 12, farts and eating chippies and, hot girls and two-timing the hot girls against each other, that sounds cool.
No.
And getting the hot girl because you picked up your mess, that sounds cool too, to an 11-year-old boy. But to a 39-year-old man, you're just like, nah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
It's brain numbing. But he pulled out a couple classics in there. He pulled out Chairman of the Board, which, John, have you ever seen that one?
I did see that once.
Oh God.
Yeah.
That one is really bad. That one is one that I used to watch all the time, but even I knew back then, I'm like, this is shit.
Yeah, I think it was like the box cover, like Carrot Top's like surfing through an office building.
It's
and I was
all
like,
Carrot Top surfing. He's got an idea book that has all of his wacky creations. And yeah, it's got a Melrose Place star in it. Who else is in it? Oh, there's Raquel Welch, I think, is the villain.
oh, maybe.
Yeah,
but-
that's one we got to do.
Oh no.
Eventually.
No. God, no.
Oh, jeez. All right. Let's go on to review number 2, okay?
All right.
Absolutely mindless, but I'd be lying if I denied still getting a few laughs. I'm so sorry. I remember thinking Pauly Shore was hilarious back in the mid-90s, which is a great reminder of the inherent stupidity of 13-year-old boys.
Yeah. They're right about the inherent stupidity of 13-year-old boys, but I don't know when this person got laughs. I didn't laugh once.
Yeah, I also did not laugh at all. Like I was just more bored than anything. Okay, where's the funny part?
I guess if you buy into Pauly's shtick, then I bet you laugh your ass off. But if you don't, you're just sitting there thinking, when will this torture end? Why am I in Guantanamo Bay?
Yeah, I just kept watching and just going like, man, the 90s were a fucking trip. That's what I would kept going. I'm like, the 90s were pre 9/11, very weird time for the world. Like before 9/11, we were babies. Let's just put it that way. We were babies and we thought everything was weird. The opening of this movie is weird, by the way, but it's the only thing that I like about this movie is the opener because of the motion graphics side of it.
Oh, you mean the opening credit? Yeah,
Opening credits.
very 90s. Like
It's so 90s with like the collage of mixed media shit and just the irreverent goofiness of it. I'm like, that is pure MTV 90s right there. And specifically the 94, 95, 96 period. It's that time. I remember getting a yearbook I think it was around 96 that the cover literally looked just like the opener to Biodome. The collage shit all over the place. I remember that.
Hey,
Crazy.
art's reciprocal every 30 years. Well, society is reciprocal every 30 years. So it seemed like almost like a meta or what's his name? Who did the Campbell soup can? art? Andy Warhol. Yeah, kind of like almost an Andy Warhol kind of thing going on. Yeah.
Yep. All right, let's go to review number 3. Before Dude, Where's My Car, there was Biodome. Obnoxiously brainless comedy that goes on longer than it should. The hilarity doesn't start until the 50-minute mark, when it generally got a few chuckles out of me, but falls beneath itself once again when it tries to have an environmental awareness that, surprise, surprise, doesn't go anywhere by the end. Shore and Baldwin's gags upon gags don't work, and their personalities are horridly vile most of the time. When it comes to the heartfelt scenes that improves upon the characters, but what do you expect from a pre-Freddy Got Fingered offensive comedy? Cool opening credits, at least. Yeah.
That's our second Freddy Got Fingered reference.
I mean, Freddy Got Fingered was bad, but it was Tom Green, and I kind of
Yeah.
forgive that movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We did an April Fool's episode on it where we pretended to be like film snobs about it. But yeah, Freddy Got Fingered, like you can look at it uh as somebody said, like an anti-comedy movie. Like he's almost incessantly like relentlessly mocking the type of movie that the studio wanted him to make, which is ballsy. But that doesn't make it watchable in any way, shape, or form. But
I disagree. I like Freddy Got Fingered, even though it's ridiculous.
but yeah, the reviewer kind of hits a nail on the head, but like I also disagree. Like I don't think that it took 50 minutes for the humor to start. I just don't think it started. And it's a bad sign when somebody says this went on too long when this movie's what, like 88 minutes long?
Oh, yeah. This is the short one. This is not a crazy long movie at all. This is, I think, probably, as you said, like 70 or 80 minutes long.
And that's a bad sign when a movie's like 85 to 90 minutes and you say, "Oh, it's too long." Like, uh-oh.
No, it's got a 20-minute long montage of Pauly Shore and Stephen Baldwin doing goofy shit. Like,
Yeah.
that's it. Like, that's why it feels long, because you're just like, okay, where's the stakes at? Where's the plot at? Where are the points where we actually like see the characters do things that progress the plot along? And you don't have that in this movie. So it's like, okay, 20 minutes is a long time to see Pauly Shore's face and Stephen Baldwin being ridiculous. And then you finally get to like some things that happen right towards that 50-minute mark. You know?
Yeah.
But all right, let's go to our final review. The mere fact that Pauly Shore got to make out with 90s Kylie Minogue is legitimately infuriating.
Fair.
Very fair. This is like right after she fooled around with Jean-Claude Van Damme on Street Fighter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Poor,
yeah. There's
poor
a whole
Kylie Minogue.
Poor Kylie Minogue. Never could catch on in America, but like is a superstar in the UK, but never could translate over here.
Man, Jean-Claude Van Damme and Pauly Shore, man, talk about just riding that D list.
But it was at their peak. Okay. Street Fighter, that's Jean-Claude's peak. It's also his peak when he was on drugs and cocaine and shit. Yeah. And Pauly Shore, Biodome, that was his peak. We didn't know yet that the cliff was going to go straight down.
Yeah.
There was no like gradual decline. No, it's Biodome, peak, done. Off the cliff. Good time. Good time. John, some final thoughts on Biodome before we wrap up today?
So I think the biggest problem is, well, this movie's unsavable by this. I would throw this script out. I would be like, there's no rewriting this thing to make it work. But I think if there was anything, if there's John, please script doctor this thing, make it work, is change Stephen Baldwin's character to be more normal. Don't have him just try to be Pauly Shore 2.0. If maybe there was something kind of redeeming about him, you could tolerate Pauly a little bit more. And maybe, if the character had any sense of brains or morality or thoughtfulness, you could kind of save this. But this movie is almost anarchistic in a sense of like, these are the worst people imaginable, doing the worst things imaginable, torturing people with no repercussions or no sense of what they're doing. They're almost sociopaths. And there's once it comes time for them to redeem themselves, it's too late. You never gave the save the cat moment. You never gave any redeeming qualities about these two whatsoever. And maybe since Stephen Baldwin can act to a degree, maybe if you had him be slightly more of a normal character, you could have tried to salvage something. But No, they just decided, oh, you're going to be Pauly Shore as well in this.
I have a theory on how to fix it that kind of even goes a little bit further than yours. I say make Stephen Baldwin the straight character. Put all the goofiness in Pauly Shore.
Yeah,
Make Stephen Baldwin the character. Because think about it this way. Every time that we have seen a Pauly Shore movie work well, he always has a straight character to counterbalance him.
Yeah.
Right? In Encino Man, it was Frodo's buddy, Sean Astin. Okay?
Yeah.
And to a lesser degree, Brendan Fraser. He was kind of goofy too, but not nearly as bad. So like that trifecta of characters kind of balanced each other out. You had the Weasel as the crazy one, you had Sean Astin as the one we want to sympathize with, and you had obviously Link, great movie by the way. Link as kind of like the fish out of water. Okay. You go to the father-in-law or son-in-law, excuse me, and it is the dad character who kind of balances out the goofiness that Pauly brings to the table. So I think the problem is that there's no balance to this. You know, it's not like you can do Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure with Biodome, because that only works because it's Bill and Ted.
They're charming.
Yeah. They're charming. We root for them. No one roots for Bud and Doyle in this because they're assholes. Yeah. Like, that's the thing. Like, it would be a thing where, like, I would root for Bill and Ted to beat the shit out of Bud and Doyle. Oh, dude, that's a sequel right there. Biodome versus Bill and Ted. Can you
Bill
imagine
and Ted's
that?
phone booth just lands inside the Biodome.
No. Yeah, it just lands inside the Biodome, and they like beat the shit out of each other. Because I would be rooting for Bill and Ted, 100%. But they're just assholes, and they're goofy fucking assholes that have no redeeming qualities. So I think the only way you make it work is if you make Pauly Shore that, and you make Stephen Baldwin the straight character who's like, I'm friends with you because we're roommates. And you get me out of my comfort zone. Yeah. And you could say like, well, Brian, that sounds kind of like a movie like Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. Well, yeah, it's because that dynamic actually works.
Weekend at Bernie's, you know.
Weekend at Bernie's, the same deal. That dynamic works. So we see when we see these classic duos, there's always a straight character and there is a goofy, like wild child character. And I think that if you had those two and saw like, okay, well, what happens when we have this situation? How does one character react to the Biodome versus another? Then it becomes a matter of conflict. And then it becomes a matter of, well, how is it going to tear these two characters' relationship apart and then bring them together? You know what I mean? Like, it just breeds more story. I almost think of like the movie Stripes, where you've got Bill Murray's character is vastly different from Harold Ramis's character. And how do they react to being in the army? So like, that's what I think this movie's missing. That's what I would change, is make Stephen Baldwin a pure straight arrow character.
It's like after Phantom Menace, if they decided, well, people didn't really like Jar Jar, you know what we need to do? Let's get a second Jar Jar. Let's get two of them.
Yeah, let's get two Jar Jars, because that's what the movie needed.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Well, and we've talked all we can about fucking Biodome. The dome within the dome.
Oh, Brian, we're locked into this podcast for 1 year.
Yo,
we have to keep talking about it.
No. There's only so much Biodome you can talk about. John, where can they find you at on the internet?
Let's see, Facebook, Instagram, and over on YouTube, JDubs Video Nasties. So go check that out. And if you like what I do, make sure you do all the things: the liking, the subscribing, the belling, but not the thumbs down. Don't do that button. That one sucks. But do all the other ones. Do all the positive ones.
Any new videos coming out on your channel?
Yeah, so I ran into some timing issues where I just was not able to get out certain videos. I was trying to stretch myself a little too far, and I had to wrangle it in. So right now I'm just I have my script finished for Men in Black, So Many Questions. So I'll be shooting that one soon and hopefully getting it out as soon as possible.
Sweet. Sweet.
Yeah.
No, I've been doing something where, because we haven't really done a extra episode or a bonus episode, because it takes a lot of time. I've been using our newsletter to point to John's videos. So if you subscribe to our newsletter, look in the description, I will point directly to John's little videos. So when he puts them out, you'll see them right there.
Aha.
In the newsletter. Aha.
I
See?
like it. Yeah.
Like it. Well, with it said, of course, if you have loved this episode, do me a favor and share it with your friends. Share it with them all, okay? I really appreciate that. On top of that, if you want to follow us, you can listen to us on your favorite podcast app by going to our website, cinemapsychoshow.com/follow. See it right there at the bottom there. And when you do that, you'll go ahead and see all of our little buttons we have for every one of our podcast apps. You can click them, and boom, you can automatically subscribe to us and follow us on your favorite podcast app. So you'll get a new episode every time one comes out. On top of that, if you are watching us here on YouTube, hey, thank you for doing that. Do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell, hit that notification link, because those things really do help us out. I'm serious, okay? They really do. That is how our podcast gets suggested out to the other people out there on the YouTube land, and it really does help us out. So please do that if you can. And with that said, we will see you next time.
Hollywood, let the weasel be King Lear. I want to see it.